Welcome to the tutorial Creating a Mixed Rig. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create different types of rigs and then show you how to set up the rig that we're going to use to rig our cartoon rabbit. So an open rig is basically what we already have here in the network view. What it means is there is no hierarchy basically. All of these pegs and drawing elements are all linked to a master peg, but the hand isn't linked to the forearm and the forearm isn't linked to the upper arm. So everything is free and independent. So when you're animating, what you really do is you just place drawing objects wherever you want them. Like that. So the open rig is actually the simplest rig to use. It's the easiest to understand when you first start animating. So it's not that we don't recommend it, it's just that we believe there are other advantages to using a mixed rig. Also, when you do something like this with an open rig, you can't use motion keyframes. You can only use stop motion keyframes. And what a motion keyframe is this. If I then move down my timeline and I decide that I want this arm to swing from this position to this position, the software cannot interpolate it properly. That's not actually bad, but it looks like it's okay. But if I actually highlight the upper arm and move the playhead back and forth, you'll see that there's actually a weird transformation going on with the arm, that it actually changes volume a bit as it goes down. And sometimes the examples are much more extreme. The actual drawing object warps as it goes from point A to point B. So you can't use keyframes like this. You have to use stop motion keyframes, and you can set them like this. So as you can see, the interpolation disappeared between the two keyframes, and now the arm actually jumps. The forearm jumps from one position to the other. And that's okay if you make smaller increments and you push the keyframes closer together. But like we said, that's not what we're going for our cartoon rabbit. So I'm not going to show you how to create a hierarchy rig. And that's the rig where limbs are connected to one another in a chain, so the hand to the forearm to the upper arm, but instead a type of mixed rig. And we don't do that in the timeline view, we actually do that in the network view. So I think I'm going to work on this arm because if I'm correct, it's at a convenient location at the end of the rig right here. So the first thing we need is a peg, and we can get one by using the keyboard shortcut Control P or Command P if you're using Mac. And what we want to do is we want to drag this peg and connect it above the arm. But instead of unconnecting this wire, in which case it might be really, really confusing then to reconnect it to the proper place all the way up here in the master peg, what we want to do is hold down the Alt key as we slide it past the wire, and it automatically gets connected if it passes over any wires. You can really do that anywhere, and then you can pull it off completely. So we're going to put it above the arm actually, like that. And then what we're going to do is easily unconnect the forearm and the hand and connect this peg to both of them. But then what we also want to do, I'm just going to drag all these things a little farther away so they're easy to work with. I'm going to put these over here. Then what we want to do is add another peg that controls just the forearm and the hand. So we're going to use Command P again. And this time I'm going to slide it over the forearm by holding down Alt. And I'm going to unconnect the hand and then connect the hand from here. So in this way, the hand is connected to the forearm and the hand is connected to the arm. And we can see this both in the timeline, which is organized itself into a hierarchy, and you can see that by this kind of staggering of the pegs that you can then collapse or uncollapse. And also in the camera view. So if we select the arm, we're actually selecting the drawing object here, but then if you use the keyboard shortcut B, it'll go up to its peg, and then B again to go up to the full arm peg. And then what you can do is you can move the entire arm together, and you can do the same thing for the forearm. So here you've selected the drawing object, you go up to B, which allows you to go up to its peg, and then you can go up to one more higher, so the hand and the forearm will move together like that. But already you're seeing some problems here, and that's because the pivots are not placed correctly. So we're going to undo that. Because as you may have realized, these two new pegs that we added also have pivots that need to be placed just as we place them for the drawing objects, then we link them to their pegs. The problem with the pivots that belong to pegs is that unlike pivots that belong to drawing elements, they cannot be animated over time. So once you set a pivot, that's where it's going to be. And you might see the problem if we actually select this one here, so it's offset from the shoulder. We can move it once, which I can do using this tool in the Advanced Animation toolbar. But then if we switch views, I can't change it again because it's the same peg. I can't move it down so that it's actually where the upper arm ends. That's it. Once I set it, I can't set it again. Well, actually, that's not true. I can reset the pivot or move it around again, but once I move it, say to somewhere really obvious like here, and I switch views, you'll see that it's reset in all the views, so I can't reset the pivot for different views. It'll be the same for the front, 3/4, and profile view. And then if I decide to perform some type of a transformation, so I'll set a keyframe here, and then another keyframe will automatically be set because I performed a transformation with the transform tool. And then I decide, hey, I want to get rid of this. I've keyframed a bunch of stuff, and now I just want to get rid of this. Well, you can do this by right-clicking on the element where you would like to reset. So in this case, it's the peg, and you can choose the menu item clear all values. However, if you do this, not only did my keyframes and that interpolated rotation disappear, which is what I wanted, my pivot point for that peg has been reset. And maybe it's not obvious until I go back to the front view, but if you remember, before I moved this pivot to the proper place on the shoulder, it sat right here between the chest and the forearm. And that's not what I want. I don't want all my pivots to be reset once I set them. I just wanted to get rid of those keyframes and that interpolation. And the thing is, the difference between a drawing element and a peg is that you can actually reset or clear all those values of keyframing without resetting your pivots on a drawing element. So now that I've sold you on the merits of a drawing element over a peg, you might see where I'm going with this. So in order to create this specific type of mixed rig, we're going to use drawing elements as pegs. So the first thing we're going to do is use the keyboard shortcut Command R on Mac or Control R on Windows to bring up another drawing element. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag it across using the Alt key, the arm wire, so here, like that. And then what we're going to do is delete this peg here. So it's essentially replaced that peg that was here. Then instead of opening up the layer properties like I normally would by clicking on this yellow box, I'm actually going to bring up the layer properties using this menu here. And then I'm going to separate it and then give it its own spot so we can see it continually change as we work. So if I select this element here, we can see the layer properties. So what we need to do now is to give this element a drawing column. And if you look in the timeline for a minute, you'll notice that the icon beside the element is blue, green, and orange, where normally the icon beside a vector drawing layer is red, yellow, and blue. So this indicates to us there's something different about this element, and what's different is that you can't add keyframes or drawings to it yet because it's not hooked up to anything. So what we're going to do is go to the Drawing tab in the Layer Properties panel, and in this full name field we're going to click on the Function button. So now we've given this element the ability to accept drawings, and we can see that because this button now became enabled, and what that is the Create Empty Drawing button. So I'm going to click on this and give this layer an empty drawing. The next thing we're going to do is rename the peg, and since we have the layer properties open, we can rename it directly in here. So I'm going to name it Karate Rabbit underscore O2 underscore arm dash peg, and then hit enter to validate your change, and you can see that both the element and the layer in the timeline have been renamed. The next thing we need to do is copy and paste the pivot from the arm peg or the arm drawing layer, well, they're both linked so it's the same pivot, and apply it to this peg element here. And the reason that we're choosing these two is because this indicates the upper arm and where the pivot is located on the shoulder. And so if we want to rotate this entire group, this entire arm, we want to rotate it from that same pivot at the shoulder. So let's zoom in here in the camera view so you can see it happen as it goes. So right now, because this element is selected, we see that the pivot is sort of off-centered where we'd like it to be here. So then if we scroll down in the timeline, actually I'm going to expand the timeline too so we can see what's going on. And we go to the arm drawing element layer, so it's this one right here. We can do what we did before. We can copy cells from the timeline, and then we can scroll back up to the peg element and use a paste special. And then the advanced tab, we can select update drawing pivot and hit enter. And if you notice, the pivot jumped from where it was around here to the shoulder. So now these three modules all have the same pivot. So the next thing I'm going to do may seem a little strange. I'm going to paint a big colored X roughly over where the pivot is. So I'm just going to do that first, and then I'll explain to you why I've done it. So the first thing we need to do is to create another indicator color. So I'm going to choose the last indicator color that we created. And then choose something bright like a fluorescent pink. And I'm going to name it crosses. Then I'm going to select the brush tool and draw my X. So you just saw the two strokes that I created disappear, and I'll tell you why that is. That's because our drawing element slash peg is not connected to either a composite or a display module. So to correct that, we can click into the network view and then use the keyboard shortcut Control H for both Windows and Mac. Then what we can do is connect our Karate Arm O2 arm peg to the composite. And I'm just going to bring the composite closer to the other composite so I can see where to connect it. So we want to connect it right in front of all the other drawings. So this green node indicates that it's at the front, and also the left is the front. So it sits on top of all the other drawings. And as you can see, it's appeared in the camera view because it is now linked to this display. I'm going to drag it back so it's still close by. So the reason that I drew this pink X is because sometimes when you're animating and you want to grab a certain body part, because most of the animating is done in the camera view, you just want to grab an arm or whatever, you actually generally want to grab the entire arm at this peg. But because you're just sweeping across, sometimes you don't actually grab it. So it's better to have something large there that you can grab, so you don't just accidentally grab the upper arm and start making transformations on that when you really mean to grab the entire arm by grabbing this peg. So what I'm going to do now is actually do the exact same thing but replace this peg here that's controlling the forearm and the hand. So we're going to use our keyboard shortcut, Command or Control R. We're going to use Alt to slide it above. We're going to delete the old peg. And then we're going to go to the Drawing tab, give it a drawing column, give it an empty drawing, rename it, Karate Rabbit 02. Let's call it lower arm peg, I guess. Peg. So it controls all the lower arm, the forearm, and the hand. So now we want to copy and paste the pivot, and because we're going to place the pivot on the lower arm, which controls the forearm and the hand, we want to use the pivot from the forearm because it rotates at the elbow here. So we're going to scroll down and right click and do our copy cells from timeline, scroll back up, do a paste special. You can see that it says update drawing pivot, enter, and you can see the pivot jump to the proper place. And now we just want to add that X. So as we can see, the same thing happened because this isn't connected to the composite, which I'll do right now. And like I said, it doesn't matter where it is, if it's in front or behind the X right here. That's a really badly drawn X, by the way. We couldn't see it, so now this is already attached to the other composite, which is attached to a display, so as soon as I hooked it in, we saw it in the camera view. So now what I'm going to do is go through the entire Karate Rabbit rig and set up the other limbs and the face just as I did here. I'm going to speed up that part of the video and then only slow it down again when I have additional information to give you that I haven't shown you yet about the Karate Rabbit's rig. Okay, so I think I've pretty much finished all the bottom end rigging. Before I continue, I just want to go over some of the things that happened while I was rigging the cartoon rabbit. The first being when I tried to rig the second arm, the arm accidentally disappeared in the camera view. And the reason that happens is that after you've created a drawing column, so after you've clicked on this button where it says local under the drawing tab for one of these drawing modules / pegs, usually you go into the timeline and you create an empty drawing for that element. If that element is collapsed, so let's look at one of these. So this, for example, if this is collapsed, and then I add that empty drawing, I'm actually going to essentially make this entire eye disappear. So you always have to uncollapse it first before you can add that empty drawing, just so that you can still see everything in the camera view and nothing disappears. The second thing is that there are two shortcuts that I use quite often while I was rigging. The first one being is if something is selected in the camera view with the transform tool, let's do the ear for example like this, and then I click in this gray space in the network view, and then I use the keyboard shortcut O, it'll take me to where that module is in the network. So that's a fast way of finding the module in the network. Also, whatever is selected both in the camera view, the transform tool, or whichever module is selected in the network view, it should be the same. If you click on this button here, the center on selection button, it'll take you to that selection in the timeline. So that was a good way for me to be able to jump around and find what I was looking for quickly in the 3 different views. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is back up and do something a little scary here. I'm going to do my select all, and I'm going to click on one of these 2 buttons. Like I said, again, it doesn't matter which one, and say OK, and I'm going to hope that the network will untangle itself a bit. So it's not bad. Oh, what are these over here? Normally shouldn't have anything loose like that, so I'm curious as to what these are. Oh boy. I guess sometimes when you're fooling around in the network view, things accidentally get unhooked, which I'm wondering is what happened here. At some point if I did an undo or something like that. Okay, so these might be duplicates. They're not pegs. So we're just going to delete these and see. So I think that looks okay. Hopefully that won't come back to haunt us. Everything looks okay. So now what I'm going to do is do the upper portion of the rigging. I'm going to take these sections that have already been grouped into pegs with a top peg, such as the leg peg, the arm peg, things like that, and I'm going to give them even higher pegs to group them even further, basically. Underneath your master peg, what you're really looking to have is just one peg that controls the upper body and one peg that controls the lower body. But we're going to start downwards moving up. So the first thing I want to create is, let's start with the facial features. So I see my eye pegs. So these pegs I want to attach together to one peg, another one of those drawing modules / pegs, but I also want to add the mouth, the nose, and the eyebrows. So let's just start with adding another drawing element, dragging it over using Alt, unconnecting this, and I'll connect this in. And so we see the one for the nose as well and the mouth here. So let's bring those out. And the 2 eyebrows, which I saw down here somewhere. Yeah, the eyebrows. like that. And I'm going to call this one Karate Rabbit underscore facial features dash peg. So that's that. And then we want to attach this group of facial features along with the 2 ears and the head to something called a head peg. So I think I'm going to try to reorganize again. Okay, so I didn't really change much. So let's find the ears. Add another drawing element. We'll drag it across and touch the other ear. We're actually going to attach the facial features. And now we're just looking for the head and the neck. I'm going to drag this a bit farther away. Again, it's good to keep dragging your modules far away so you can work on them in kind of an emptier gray space so that you don't get confused. So here's the head and here's the neck. So head. And the neck. Okay, and this one we want to rename. Karate Rabbit head. Actually dash peg. There we go. And actually I forgot to add drawing columns to this in the last peg, as well as an empty drawing, so let's do that now. So we have to uncollapse it. We want to go to drawing, give it a column, give it an empty drawing, so that's good. We'll do that for facial features because I don't think I did it. Yeah. And empty drawing. So that's good for that. Actually, now that I think about it, we actually want to make the neck separate and the neck controlling the head. And I'll explain that in terms of movement. Even though it seems like it should be head down, it's actually sort of neck up. That's moving and wiggling from the torso because the neck controls the entire head, which controls the facial features and the ears, etc. So we actually want the neck separate. So let me create another peg for that. Drag it in here. In that Karate Rabbit neck. Same thing, give it a drawing column. Here it's uncollapsed, so we can add a empty drawing, which is good. And then all of this stuff, so the neck, head, facial features, oh, and we haven't done the torso yet. Let's do the torso, and then we're going to attach all of that to a peg called the upper body. So let's do the torso first. And for the torso, we really want the arms and the tail, as well as, of course, the body. And to this we want to connect, I lost my body, so this must not be uncollapsed. There we go. We want to add the tail. As well as the two arms. So the arms are here. Oh, and I realized a mistake here. This shouldn't be upper arm. This actually should be lower arm. I'm just going to change that while I'm here. There we go. Okay, so that's our torso. And so we're going to attach, like I said, the neck and the torso to the upper body. I think I'll try to untangle this one more time because it's sort of hard to look at. Obviously, you're going to have the sample material, so hopefully you'll be able to see what it looks like without all of this jumble. Okay. So we have the torso here, and we want to attach that and the neck peg. So these two. Call this Karate Rabbit upper body peg. And now we just want to do the lower body, which is really just the two legs and the hips. So we'll add another drawing element. It's always good to put the word peg because these are blue and they're not green. It's good to write in the word peg because normally anything that's green with this dash P is a peg. So this is letting us know once again that we're using this drawing element as a peg. We still need to add the hips. Okay, so let me reorder one more time. And as you may have noticed, I actually didn't add any extra crosses to the ears or center the peg for the upper and lower body, so I should do those now, but you get the picture of the structure that you should use. And like I said, you could always refer to the sample material as well. We should have the proper hierarchy also in that sample material. So just to go over it one more time verbally, the master peg is connected to two pegs that are actually drawing elements, they're blue, that are called the upper body peg and the lower body peg. The lower body peg is attached to the hips and two blue drawing element slash pegs called legs. Then the upper body peg is connected to two drawing module slash pegs, so they're blue, that are called neck and torso. The neck is connected to both the neck and the head. The head connects to the head, the facial features, and the two ears. The facial features is connected to the mouth, nose, two eyes, and the two eyebrows. Then if we go back up under the upper body, the torso connects to the actual body, the tail, and the two arms. So that's it for the tutorial creating a mixed rig. I know it's a lot to digest and it might be a video that you have to watch a few times, but I hope that it was helpful. Stay tuned for the tutorial creating a mixed rig part 2, where I'll tie up some of the loose ends that I wasn't able to get to in this tutorial.